Today, we have an incredible guest that I'm so excited to share with you guys. The man, the myth, the legend, the godfather of house hacking.
But under our operation, there's 30-something properties and about 150 to 200 rooms under management.
If people could put $20,000 into a slot machine, how many people do you think would take that bet?
Like 1 million out of 1 million should take that bet.
The man behind the curtain.
To juice the income, I put my bedroom on Airbnb, and I created like a quasi bedroom out of the living room, putting up like a curtain and a room divider and a futon, and I slept behind there for a year.
And the author of the book on house hacking from Bigger Pockets, we have Craig Curelop. Craig, welcome to the show.
Vince, thanks so much, man. We talked for like 5 minutes about how to pronounce my last name, and you still didn't get it right.
Oh, no, I thought I had
It's all good, though. Yeah, it's good, though. Don't worry, bro. Curelop, but it's all good, man. People, like, my whole life I've gotten Curelop, like, my whole life, to the point where I've almost adopted that as my last name. So you're good, bro.
It's important that we share that so that everybody knows. Otherwise, people are just going to keep perpetuating the wrong last name pronunciation for the rest of time.
I think we're too far down the line at this point. Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
It's already out of the bag, and it's past the point of no return.
You can't put toothpaste back in the tube, so that's basically where we're at with it.
I've never heard that metaphor, and that's actually hilarious.
Yep.
So today we have a really cool story for you guys. What Craig has done is really remarkable, because what I've seen personally is that a lot of people might buy their first couple rental properties or house hacks, and then after that, they just kind of stall out because they don't have enough capital to scale. They're not sure where to go next. And it seems like there's this big leap between you've got your second, third, single family property, and you're just not sure where to go after that. And I see a lot of people get stuck there, and Craig hasn't, and he's actually pivoted into a new lane that's allowed him more scalability. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys today. So Craig, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Let's talk about the first real estate deal that you ever did. How did you find it, and how did you approach that situation when you were first getting started?
Yeah, so this was back in 2017. I had just moved to Denver, and I was pretty set on house hacking. Like, it was the obvious move for like a first-time real estate investor to do. At the time, the only way to house hack was to buy a 2 to 4 unit property, live in one unit, rent out the rest. Like, there was no rent people were doing it, of course, but there was no information on it out there. Even Bigger Pockets, the only thing they had was like duplex, triplex, quad. So I was only looking at 2 to 4 unit properties. And I found a duplex that was like 1.5 miles from the Bigger Pockets office, which is where I was working. And I was like, okay, like, this is probably the best thing I can do. It was totally renovated. Found it on the MLS. It was totally renovated. And I was like, okay, I would love to be able to just move into this thing, rent it out, and like carry on with my life. And so when I was running the numbers, I found out that when I moved into it, I couldn't cash flow it. Like, and I really wanted to cash flow it. So I bought it for $385. I put about $17,000 down. My monthly payment was like $2,200 a month. I rented out the top for $1,700, and I would live in the bottom, and I was still paying, right? And that was like not part of the plan. So what I did to juice the income was I put my bedroom on Airbnb, and I created like a quasi bedroom out of the living room, putting up like a curtain and a room divider and a futon, and I slept behind there for a year. And then I was making $1,100 a month off of the room Airbnb, plus the $1,700 from upstairs. I guess it was $1,750, and I was making $2,850 a month on a $2,100 mortgage, and I thought that was and living for free. And so I was like, boom, mission accomplished.
Who do you think that is a good fit for? Living behind a curtain to get that extra income from your house hack to force it to work?
Yeah, at the time I was 23 or 24 years old, single man. And you can be a female doing this. It doesn't really matter. But that's just who I was, right? And so I was like, I'm only going to be 24 once. Like, my tolerance for living like this is not going to be this way forever. And I don't want it this way forever. And I'm single. And I really want to provide, like, my why was I really wanted to provide for my future wife. And there was no way, like, for me, I just felt like there was no way for me to do that in Colorado at the time other than this strategy. And so I think, like, when you're in the beginning, you need to I heard that quote from Dave Ramsey, do what other people, what is that? It's like, do what people aren't willing to do now so you can have what they don't have later kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I think it's live like no one else is willing to live today so that you can live like no one else can tomorrow.
Yes, that's the exact one. And so I was like, okay, like how do I make it so I can live like no one else can today? Because I've got pretty high tolerance for stuff. So I that's what I did. And I also knew in the back of my head that this would be part of my story. And like I always admired like the crazy stories my dad told me when he was a kid and growing up. And I was like, well, this is going to be a crazy story that I tell my kids growing up. And little did I know that I would, be on platforms and write a book and all that and sharing the story to lots of people and inspiring lots of people. But that was kind of like where I started it and how I like justified it in my head.
So the really interesting thing about being able to share this, the first deal that you did before we get into everything else, is we actually can look now, not quite at the end game, but at the mid game of this property because, okay, how much did you put down exactly, do you think, in terms of your down payment and closing costs?
It was like $17,000.
$17,000. And how much is that property worth today?
It got appraised in 2022 for $800,000.
And you bought it for $350,000. So you've gained $410,000 in equity. Let's say that maybe it's been flat for the last 3 years, like most properties have. You've probably paid down the mortgage. I'm going to guess here, probably $40,000.
Yeah, 40, 50 grand. Yep.
So you might be looking at $450,000 in equity. How much cash flow do you think that you've gotten?
Right now, it cash flows about $1,000 a month, and I have it long term now.
So you've probably made $50,000 in cash flow. Adding it to the $450,000, that means that your down payment of around $20,000 has turned into $500,000 in wealth, which is a 20 or 25x return.
Yeah, it's nuts. That property, yeah, I mean, it's nuts. Like for sure, that is the power of house hacking, is because you can buy it with such a low amount down, and it makes your ROI go through the roof.
If people could put $20,000 into a slot machine and be told that 8 years later it'll be worth $500,000, how many people do you think would take that bet?
I think a million out of a million should take that bet. But the thing is like it was work to do it, and so and there was risk and there was stuff and there were unknowns. That right there is what people aren't willing to do.
Yep, 100%. We're going to go through your next couple properties before we dive into what you've pivoted to today. So I know that you've got several of them. Deal number 2, just at a high level, what was the purchase price? How did that property perform? Any interesting notes that you want to take away from that second deal that you did?
Yeah, so I like to say I got a little bit smarter on each one. So second one, I learned about rent by the room, right? Co-living before it was called co-living. And I found a single family home outside of Denver, about 10 miles north. And I bought it for $343,000. It was a 4-bed, 2-bath. I added another bedroom, so it's a 5-bed, 2-bath, and rented out I lived in my own room now, so I actually had a private place to go to and retreat to. And I rented out the other 4 rooms, so I lived with 4 roommates. And at the time, that mortgage payment, it was a little higher at that time, but I did refinance. But it was like $2,300 when I bought it, and I was renting out the other rooms for like $3,100 total. So I was living for free, plus making an extra, $800 over the mortgage. And again, that property, I still own that one today, and it's in transition right now. I added a 6th bedroom now, and it's in the process of getting rented.
And so you clearly were smarter in that second deal because it was cash flowing while you were living there and living for free. Right off the bat, you didn't have to live behind a curtain this time. How much do you think that property appreciated since you bought it?
That one, not as much. So that one's probably worth around $500 now.
Okay. But the cash flow is better. So it's something that you can really hold, and it sounds like it really worked out. And in conjunction with the first one, you have this really big compounding wealth machine now that's working for you, even just from the first 2.
Yep, and that's when it starts to get exciting, right? Because now, like my portfolio as a whole, I moved out making about $1,000 on the first one, and then making, when I moved out of this one, roughly $1,000. So you're talking, $2,000 a month in less than 2 years.
And I know that you've always been really good about keeping your expenses reasonable. I'm sure that was part of the process too. I think that you've shared stories before about how you used to ride your bike to bigger pockets to just save money.
Yeah, I rode my bike every day to work, obviously from the place that was 1.5 miles away, but the new place that was 10 miles away, I was along the bike path. So I bought houses along bike paths so that I could bike to work. So I bike to work every day there and back all winter, like no matter what, like rarely did I miss a day biking to work.
That is incredible. And I think that's something that's probably a sacrifice that most people are not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it paid off for you. Property
Did.
number 3, what did that one look like?
So that one, again, I got smarter. This one I bought a little bit closer to Denver, still along a bike path. This one had a downstairs kitchen. So I saw that and I was like, whoa. So what I did with this is I basically turned it into like a faux duplex, like a quasi duplex, or technically it's a single family home with a mother-in-law suite. And so I guess it already was that, but I did renovate the downstairs to make it look a little bit nicer. It was a little bit ugly looking. And I rented out the bottom on Airbnb. And then I lived in a bedroom in the top. And I rented out the 2 other rooms. So now I really only had 2 roommates, had separate living quarters from the Airbnb, and I was only sharing with 2 other people. That one I bought for $385, and I bought that one for $380, and I put 5% down because I moved into it. The Airbnb downstairs was making about $2K a month, and then the other 2 rooms were making me probably like maybe $1,800 a month. So I was making like $3,800 a month while living there. And my mortgage payment on that one was like $2,200 or $2,300. So, now I'm making $1,500 a month or over the mortgage, living for free. And I've got like only 2 roommates. So like I said, I got smarter each time, but that's how it goes.
That deal is what I call an absolute home run. Some of the best house hacks that I've ever seen are a situation where consistently there are those 2-unit house hacks where you've 1 unit upstairs, 1 unit downstairs usually, and it's classified as a single family home and it's priced as a single family home, but you have 2 livable separate units so that you can live in one, maybe with roommates that could be long-term tenants or Airbnb if you want more cash flow, and then renting out this downstairs to a separate family. Or if you want more cash flow, you can turn that lever and crank it up with midterm rentals or short-term rentals, and you can cash flow over $1,000 a month while you're living in a property for free. And I don't think that there's a better real estate deal that exists than that setup.
I never like to say never, but it was definitely a good one, and it's again still one that I own today. My philosophy is like I hardly ever sell. Like I gotta be going through something to sell, and so I think all the wealth is built in real estate, just buying and holding, and it's boring and it's sexy, and you can't be transforming as much, but it's how wealth is built.
What are your thoughts really quickly on return on equity? It's something that we've heard talked a lot about after we've had this massive surge in appreciation that we had, where there might be some properties that aren't cash flowing as well as yours. Maybe they're only cash flowing $200 or $300 a month. And if they put down 10% or 20%, and it's appreciated a lot. So they might have $200,000 in equity, but maybe they're only getting $3,600 a month in cash flow. Their return on equity might only be 3% a year on paper. And so I think in some situations like that, some people have decided to sell and cash out because their ROI on that capital is just not that high, and they feel like they could get a higher return in other places. What are your thoughts on that?
It's all about your goals. It's all about the goals. For me, I don't like the brain damage that goes through selling and rebuying and having to redeploy capital. Like I just don't like that. And personally, I think you have a lot less risk on your properties when they're not so highly levered. Like you have a high return on equity is another word for saying you have a less risky portfolio. Like if you have a higher debt balance and less equity, that just becomes more. I just don't love that. And then I guess I went ahead and I looked at I've got like probably 450, 500,000 in that one property. And like, could I sell it and even conservatively walk away with probably 300 or 400 grand and probably put it in the stock market even maybe and like get a better like return? Maybe. But like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with selling it. I just I just know that real estate over time does really well. The tax benefits are great. The ROI, I mean, if you think about ROI, I still only I only paid 20 grand to buy the house. Right. And so that keeps going. I got like a 3% interest rate on those first few deals, it's hard to pass that up.
Your ROI is so much higher as well because you did owner occupied first. That changes everything entirely, because if you do 3% down with conventional or 3.5% down with an FHA loan versus if you did, 20% down, your ROI can change by 4x just because of the amount that you put down. So living there for a year first, and then you can turn around and rent it out, allows you to do less than 20% down, and that really, really juices your ROI there. What single family properties, as far as house hacking goes, did you do after that? And then we are going to start to get into talking about co-living and 5 reasons why it's better than traditional long-term rentals.
Yeah. So after the third one, I really started scaling my real estate agent stuff, because I was like, there's no investor friendly realtors out there. Like at the time, I was finding all of these properties, and I was coming up with the ideas of these properties. Like, how great would it have been to have a mentor to be like, don't buy that duplex that's a 1-1. I mean, it ended up working out for me, right? But like, I would not buy that property knowing what I know today. I would have bought a 6-bed, 3-bath with a downstairs unit, like that kind of thing. And so once I kind of just started discovering that, I started helping more and more people buy house hacks. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is I met my wife, or my now wife, because I was her realtor, and I helped her buy her first house hack. And I played a small, minute role in helping her find the place, did a little bit helping her on the renovations a little bit, giving her some advice and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of call that and now, I still own that property. And so that's a property that, it was a rent by the room property, 4-bed, 2-bath, added a 5th bedroom. And again, it's the same story, right? It cash flows $1,000-something bucks a month, and bought it at a 3% interest rate or something like that, and it's cooking.
Isn't it true that you found your wife through the Bigger Pockets podcast, or that she found you, and that's how you guys actually found each other?
That's true. Yeah, I was. We have different stories, but she's not here, so no, I'm just kidding. I'll tell the neutral story. I was on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and she was interested in investing in Denver, and so she saw that I was investing in Denver and a realtor. And so she reached out to me through the Bigger Pockets platform, that she heard me on the podcast and all that. And so then, of course, then I represented her on her first deal, and then, we got along pretty well. So now we're married. So, yeah.
That is incredible. I wonder how many other couples out there met because of a podcast. I haven't met anyone else yet, but I'm sure it happens.
There's what's funny is maybe earlier that year, perhaps the year before, Scott Trench, like the old CEO of Bigger Pockets, he wrote a blog post about BP Love. And it was all about now launching the Bigger Pockets dating app. Like, you don't want a negative cash flowing spouse and all this kind of stuff. And everyone was so excited for it. They were like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. And then he was like, April Fools, we're not doing that. And I was like, low key, that's how I found my wife, was BP Love. That never really existed. So
that is so funny. So with all this experience that you gained with house hacking, going through these deals, including finding your wife from it, you wrote the book on house hacking for Bigger Pockets. What inspired you to write that book and to put that out there for people, and how has that been received? Because I would imagine it's really changed lives for thousands of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the real story, is that I was not the first person to write that book, or the first person to at least be offered to write that book. Brandon Turner was who they requested first to write it. But he, at the time, was starting to build Open Door Capital, and I think he was just his mental space was beyond house hacking. So he never really got around to it. So then Scott Trench actually was going to write the book next, and he even started it. He maybe wrote the intro, maybe even the first chapter. But he started taking over as CEO of Bigger Pockets. So his mental capacity couldn't even fathom writing a book on house hacking, which he was a little bit over too. And so number 3 was me, who had written, and Scott had told me years before. He said, when I first started Bigger Pockets, I told him I wanted to write a book. He said, well, start writing for the Bigger Pockets blog, write consistently, and maybe after a couple of years, maybe if there's an opportunity, potentially someday, maybe you might be able to write a book. So I did that. I wrote for the blog consistently. And then Scott, after he declined it and realized that he didn't have the time to do it, I was next in line to write the book. And I was in with house hacking at that time. I was not beyond it. And I was like, absolutely, I will write that book for you guys. And so that's how that all happened.
And if people want to find that book on house hacking, they can find it on
everywhere, Amazon, Bigger Pockets. If you want some extra stuff to go along with it, like a calculator and stuff like that, you find it on Bigger Pockets. But if you want, the cheapest, quickest way to get there, Amazon.
Real estate is a team sport. You can grow so much faster if you're in the right room. The Launch REI Mastermind is a curated space for investors who want to move from hands-on execution to professional portfolio management. This is your personal board of directors. Inside, our conversations go beyond the tactics. We cover the decisions that actually change outcomes, structure, tax strategy, and capital allocation. If you want to build alongside a vetted peer network designed for the long term, apply for the Launch REI Mastermind at the link in the show notes. So, at what point of buying these house hacks did you get to a level where you said, this is only going to scale so far. I've got to change my strategy a little bit because I want to keep going, keep acquiring properties, and I'm going to need something that scales a little bit better. What was that transition to discovering co-living and why that would eventually be the strategy that you pivoted to?
So, I mean, co-living is just like it's what I was doing. Right? Like I was renting by the room, I was living there, like it was what I was doing. And I saw that like you couldn't cash flow in Denver at that time. Like you couldn't with a regular rental. So co-living was the only way to cash flow. And so I was like, well, I want to keep buying in these high appreciating markets because I can get $1,000 a month cash flow and get a bunch of appreciation. Like that's amazing. And so, I really, over the next few years, I mean, I would still house hack every year. That was a given. And so it was really only buying like one or two a year. Like I'd buy one, my wife would buy one, and we would kind of just, cause that's easy. You're just getting the 5% down. And at that time I was really focusing on building the team out and our team of investor friendly agents. And that was like kind of my main focus. Now, we've in 2022, we've house hacked for the final time. We moved up to North Idaho and we live in our home now without any residents. And so, ever since then, it's been, focusing on building the team is kind of one element, but now we're really focusing on co-living as just a true investment. And so we've been partnering with lots of people where, they provide most of the funds and the capital, and then we are basically running the operation of the co-living. So we're finding the deal, helping renovate. We're finding the deal, managing the renovation, managing the furnishing, and then of course operating and giving even our investors that, when we're in partnering together are still getting a superb return, much more than they would in the stock market or even in a regular rental.
That is incredible. And with all I know about you, because we've been friends for several years now, I actually didn't know that angle of how you were doing that. And so that unlocks the door to scaling. And I think a lot of people should probably build a track record of doing something themselves a bit before they risk other people's capital to do something like that. You clearly have. You had the experience. You built the brand. You built the trust with people. And you've gotten it to a point now where you feel comfortable taking capital from other people and using it to invest in these deals, which allows you to scale faster, grow bigger, and also allow a return for people that are investing in the operation that you're doing. So reason number one why co-living beats long-term traditional rentals would be cash flow. Let's move to reason number two why co-living beats traditional long-term rentals.
Yeah, I mean, number two is I think a lot of people like investing in multifamily, right? Because you're never really going to be fully vacant. Like you'll always there's just a little bit of a risk hedge. Kind of same thing with co-living. It's like once you get the place filled, pretty rare for it to go back down to empty. Like you'll always have some sort of income, unless you're really not good. But you'll always have some sort of income coming in from that property. So I just think it lowers the vacancy risk.
A couple of points on that. It sounds like maybe in a similar term, it would be lease staggering, where you have the leases ending at different times and you might only have one room that's vacant in a property that's got 5 or 6 rooms rented. So you might still be getting 83% of the revenue instead of you have a long-term traditional rental that turns over and maybe it was renting for $3,500 a month. They move out. In this market, it's a little bit softer and slower. If it takes you 45 days to find a tenant, that actually could wipe out your cash flow for the whole year. So lease staggering, it has that downside protection and the stabilization speed because okay, maybe you fill up 3, 4, 5 of the rooms over 3 or 4 weeks. And even if it's not 100% occupied, it is stabilized faster.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And so, vacancy works if you have a 6 or 7 bedroom house, then it works at 1/6 or 1/7 the pace, right? Like if I'm vacant in one room, it's like I'm losing $30 a month or something like that. Whereas if I'm out in a whole apartment, that might be like, I don't know, like maybe it's like $150 a month or whatever that is. So
one of the most common, Got it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. One of the most common questions on this topic that I get asked by people is how you find and screen tenants. There are so many different scams out there, especially people being able to use AI to fake and forge documents. There's a lot of professional scammers and squatters out there. And as you're doing this at scale, I don't know how many properties you have today and how many individual rooms.
Yeah, we have the property count. I don't know. It's 30 something properties, not all owned. We manage some of them, but under our operation, there's 30 something properties and about 150 to 200 rooms under management.
So with 150 to 200 rooms under management, most property managers are not willing to do rent by the room type of clients. How are you screening all of these tenants, especially with the volume that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so the first thing that we do is we do an interest form. So someone's interested, we get them. We have an AI bot that replies to them pretty quickly, and they send out an interest form. That interest form basically is some screening criteria where if there's certain things that we don't like on what they say, then they're just out. If it makes sense in the interest form, their interest form kind of passes our gut check, then we move into the next part of the process, which is like, okay, like what room do you want? They pick the room, they apply for that room, then that's a more formal application with what you're used to. Background check, credit check, all that kind of stuff. We've got an expedited background check because speed is key here. We've got an expedited background check where if they have a 700 score or more and they can show pay stubs and they've got a clean background, then we pretty much accept them right away. If they have less than 700 credit score, then we're going to go through and call employer references and all that kind of stuff and make sure that we can actually verify that they're going to be good tenants. And so that might take 24 to 48 hours. And so that's kind of that's most of our process right there.
It sounds like as you started to scale with this, you found out that you needed systems to be able to go through finding the property, buying it, inspecting it, and then getting tenants to apply, taking them through the screening process all the way through to how those units are going to turn over, making sure that the tenants will click with each other and be able to live under the same roof. How did you go about finding out what systems you would need to make this whole operation work? Is it something that you learned yourself over time or partnering with property managers, or what did that look like as far as building out the infrastructure of all these systems that you would need?
So initially it was trial and error for me. But recently I've recognized that I am not a systems guy. I'm not. Like, I don't follow systems well. I don't set them up well. I set them up and then I forget that I set them up. Like, I'm just not, like, every which way I'm not good. And so I think it's really important to recognize fairly quickly what you're not good at and find someone that's good at what you're not good at. And so we recently partnered with this guy, Miller McSwain, who wrote the co-living book for Bigger Pockets. And he is like an operations junkie. He's like computer science nerd, like writing AI scripts and bots and everything is automated and everything is more efficient and everything is tracked like way better than what I had. And so, and he hated the acquisitions piece. He hated the real estate investing side. Like, he just wanted to be a co-living operator. And I was like, well, that's awesome. Cause like, I hate that stuff. And so we decided to partner, and now he actually runs most of the operations, and I'm familiar and I know what he does, so I can talk about it, but don't ask me to implement it because I will fail miserably.
The power of partnerships can be so valuable, and knowing where your skill set lies and what you're naturally drawn towards versus what areas you're weak in. I discovered this a couple of years ago where for myself, I had more of that visionary skill set. I know where I want to go and what I want to build at a high level. I hired an assistant who's an incredible operator that builds all of our back-end systems for everything that we do, business related and real estate related. And it's been life-changing. And so I think that no matter who you are, if you're a high earner, if you're building a real estate business, if almost no matter what, if you're doing anything entrepreneurial and you're trying to scale, having some kind of assistant that can help or partner with a lot of the operational aspects can help you scale so much faster. And it can be something where 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 rather than 2.
100%. That's the whole idea of the partnership.
Now let's move to reason number 3. Why does co-living beat traditional rentals?
I mean, I would say that for me, it's like still a pretty unique asset class. And so, and there's a lot of demand for it. So, I mean, and this depends on where you're at, right? in Denver, the average one bedroom apartment is going to rent for $1,400 or $1,500 a month. And it's probably a crappy place in a shady area. Our bedrooms that are in nice homes, in nice areas with big kitchens and big yards in beautiful locations are renting for like $700 on the low end and maybe like $1,000 to $1,100 if you want like a nice master bedroom. And so you're getting the person who's living there is getting a better product for a lot less, and they're able to like build community there too. I mean, affordability is one thing, but like people what they don't talk about these days is depression and anxiety through the roof, and the reason why that is because people are alone. They're alone, and they're on their social media scrolling for hours, and they're comparing themselves to everybody's highlight reel on Instagram and on TikTok, instead of like actually just like being present and like having a community to bond with. And so we are really community based. And so we're really trying to we promote events, we promote them hanging out. We want them to like each other. That way people are genuinely happy living in these homes. So, I mean, one, it serves the purpose of, hopefully less depression, less anxiety, all that kind of stuff. But also from the investor's perspective, it gets them to stay longer. And so it's like, I really love these win-wins here, right? Where we're giving a great product and, they're paying a little more for it than if they were to find a 6-bedroom house and have them find the 5 roommates.
That's actually a really good point. They're able to live in a way nicer house than what they would be able to afford. There's that built-in aspect of having community, friends, mental health, simply being social. I think right now a record number of adults percentage-wise are living alone, higher than what we've ever seen before. And let's actually talk about the tenants a little bit more. Who are these tenants? Why does this demand exist? And what does the profile kind of look like? I'm sure there's some variability, but what types of people are you usually getting in this application pool of, who these properties appeal to as far as the tenant base?
Yeah, so it's kind of what you'd expect. It's probably like 18 to like 30-year-old, males and females, and they're working. They're usually working like entry level jobs, or maybe they come to Colorado and they're ski bumming for a few years and they just need a cheap place. We get a lot of bartender, that kind of stuff. People that just honestly anyone that makes less than 50% of the median income and is single should be living in a room. That's basically who we're at. Yeah.
That's a huge percentage of the population. So you guys will probably have plenty of demand in the pool.
Yeah, that's always the biggest challenge, though. Honestly, is always filling the rooms and keeping them full.
Next up, what is the next reason that you think that co-living beats traditional rental properties, an advantage that it has?
I think there's just less stuff for people to think about. Like if you're renting a long-term rental, typically the tenant is responsible for lawn care, for snow shoveling, for cleaning, restocking their supplies, setting up the utilities and all that. All of that's included with co-living. So we take care of all that stuff, right? The lawn care, the snow removal. We actually stock the house with shared supplies, dish soap and toilet paper and that kind of stuff. Utilities are all included. We always have the fastest possible internet. And so all that stuff, they're getting included with the property and they don't have to worry about it. They move in, they connect to the Wi-Fi, people are coming. All they have to do is just keep the area clean, pretty much between professional cleans, take out the trash once a week, and that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. That's really incredible. I actually didn't know that it worked that way. Mm-hmm. And how does it work with the investors that are investing with you guys? Do you pay them some kind of fixed rate of return, or how does that structured? Because I don't know anyone else who's doing that. So I'm very curious just as far as how things are structured, how it works.
Yeah, right now the way it's working is that we basically do a 50-50 split. They provide the capital, we do all the work. Everything is 50-50 on the back end. So once it starts getting rented, 50-50 in the profit and in the losses. What we're moving towards going forward is a little bit more of a syndication type approach, and we haven't quite nailed down the details and if we'll do a fund or a syndication. We're actually probably leaning more towards fund because it can be open-ended, and like I said, we're really in the game of buy and hold for the infinite future, and if it ever makes sense to sell, we're not totally opposed to it. And so we're going to, that would probably be a little bit more of a preferred return kind of situation.
That's really interesting. And you'll have to keep me updated on how that goes, because that is very unique. And it sounds like it could be a really interesting opportunity for people that want to invest in this space, but be a little bit more passive, but still learn and dip their toes in and be able to earn a return on their money. Fourth reason that co-living beats traditional long-term rentals.
I would say that you have probably a little bit more control over the asset itself. So what I mean by that is like, maybe this dovetails into a little bit of the other one, but it's like people are always moving in or out, right? So let's say if you have a 7 or 8 bedroom home, let's say like out of the 12 months of the year, you got 8 people moving out. And that means like you're never really below market for too long on the rents. So you can always like increase it to market. You can always bump it up a little bit. Leases are always renewing. So like, the bumps are, $25, $25, $25. Like it happens a lot more frequently. And I think that part is pretty beneficial. And again, like, I guess it kind of ties into like a little bit of the diversity and the versatility of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I do agree that that's a really interesting aspect of it that's valuable. And this would then lead into reason number 5, which if you have one that you think is a solid number 5, we'll do it. But if not, then I might have a bonus one that would slot in at like 5.5. But let's see what yours is.
I got one more. And I'm happy to hear yours, Vince, because I'm sure there's more than 5. I would say the 5th one is because it's hard. Like there's barriers to entry here, and it like managing a co-living home is not easy. Like managing all those different personalities and people moving in and out, you've got to have some really robust systems, and you've got to like really take into the account like these people, they're fantastic people, but they're lower on the socioeconomic scale or whatever, right? So like they don't know, they're not used to like some of the stuff that we're used to and that we're expecting, right? They grew up in sloppy homes, so we got to like train them to clean. Like there's stuff that happens in that field, and because it's hard, less people want to get into it, which means there's more deals and stuff for us. Like we're still finding deals straight off the MLS like pretty frequently.
And that is actually a really big perk, that you can find deals on the MLS, because a lot of people that are doing other types of investing are only looking for off-market deals, which can be harder to find and potentially take longer. The one that I had come up with, or that I was going to tack onto here, is slightly related to what you just shared, but it's a different angle on it, which is scalability, and that it forces you to think in terms of scalability. It forces you to think about leverage, because you can't manage and do all of these rooms on your own once you get past. Where do you think that limit is? Do you think that it could be 8 rooms, it could be 10? Do you feel like there's kind of a limit before it starts to just break and you're like, I can't do all of this, I need professional management, this has to be someone's job?
I think 30 is around the number I would venture. 30 rooms, it's usually about 3 to 4 properties is where I see people being like out of breath. It feels like they're out of breath. Like, well, what do I do? Like, how do I get this done? Yeah.
This is something that is creative. There is not a ton of content out there on the topic, and you clearly have this burning desire to keep going and to do more. You built out a very successful real estate agent team in Denver. You've continued to just buy property after property, and you could have chosen something that was easier, but you chose something that was going to be new and challenging, that had risk attached to it, and has over 100, pushing 200 people now involved in this as the tenant base. Where along this journey were you just losing sleep, so frustrated, your head in your hands, just thinking, I need to get rid of all these properties, I need to throw this all away, am I doing the wrong thing, where you just really questioned everything?
I don't think I ever questioned it, to be honest. Yeah, to me, real estate is I've always gone into it with a long-term plan, like really long-term. And so like my thought was like, I'm going to buy a bunch of these houses in my 20s and in my 30s. And then in my 50s and in my 60s, I'm going to have a bunch of paid off houses, right? And that's retirement, and so that is kind of what like my game plan and thought is. And now I would say like I had limiting beliefs in a mentor of mine, and I don't stop. He's still a great mentor of mine, but he gave me a piece of advice that was don't use other people's money, because it's a lot of headaches. It's like that. It's like, it's not what you want. And I took that advice and I stayed in the back of my head for a little too long. And so I was always like a little timid to like use other people's money. But then I was like, there's some pieces of advice and that was great advice for him. And he was giving me the best advice that he thought for him. To this day, he still has not raised money, and he's probably worth tens of millions of dollars, right? Like, that was his best advice for me. So I'm not knocking him in any way. But when I think about like scale, and when I think about like, man, I'm always like itching for that desire to do more and be more, raising money is a part of that. And so now we've started to do that, and it's it's definitely where the scale will come from.
If you spend enough time in real estate, you start realizing that some of the most useful lessons don't come from books or podcasts. They come from conversations with other investors, talking through deals, mistakes, and decisions that you only face once you're on the journey. The Launch REI Newsletter is where we share those insights, the takeaways from our podcast guests, lessons from inside our mastermind community, deal breakdowns, and the patterns that we're seeing as investors grow. It's free, quick to read, and built to help you make better decisions as you scale. You can subscribe at the link in the show notes. There's no question. I think any large operator that you look at, no matter what asset class they've picked in real estate investing, raising capital becomes necessary for the type of impact and outcomes and portfolio size that people want to create. I think it would be very, very difficult for someone to achieve massive scale only using their own capital.
100%.
There comes a point where you have to jump off that diving board.
You'd have to be making tons and tons of money, like from your actively, right? Like whether it's being a real estate agent or doing a job or whatever, for sure.
Exactly. Let's talk about some of the trade-offs with co-living. How active is it really? What does the hassle factor look like for this type of property?
It's work. I mean, like if you don't have your systems in place, it's work. I mean, you're constantly trying to fill the rooms. And then, you're getting lease assigned, and then there's maintenance requests that happen. And then sometimes you get into the like, all right, like someone flushed a tampon down the toilet. Like there's 3 girls in this house, like, and everyone's pointing fingers, right? Like, and then it's because it's technically their fault. So they should be paying the bill. And like, how do you address that? Right. So it's like, there's all these like kind of little nuances and intricacies that we learn, but ultimately it's like, is it worth it? For us, it is, because it's like we were saying, right? Like that same property that, that I've got, that cash flows like, $2,000 a month. If I rented that out as a long-term rental, it would maybe make $100 or $200 a month. So you're talking like 10x cash flow returns for this extra work. And this is not like a rocket science. Like this is simple stuff. Like you put a sign that says "Don't flush tampons." Like there's like it's not rocket science that we're figuring out, but there's just like a lot of little things that you have to think of that we're figuring out.
With human beings renting properties, there are thousands of things that can go wrong. And there will probably be so many unique little things that you're going to see or have to deal with for the first time that you just never would even think of. And there's going to be aspects of you don't know what you don't know. And some things you question of, do I really need to tell people that? Do I really have to teach people that? And that operating manual and that list of what you like can't do just gets longer and longer.
100%. I mean, it gets, yes. It's always funny. You see signs on sometimes like street signs or signs on, in the bathroom, and you're just like, someone did that, and that's why that sign is there. And that's kind of sad, right? Like we probably have a lot of that in our houses.
Yep. Like, be careful of the coffee that you're about to drink. It's really hot.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever. I always see them. I can't think of one right now, but yeah.
You have a bunch of these properties and you've helped other people buy these properties. What are the most common mistakes that you're seeing people make when they're buying co-living properties?
The main thing is they just don't take it seriously. Like they don't rent out the rooms fast enough. There's not an urgency. They're not like doing all the things. Buying the house is easy. I would say find yourself a good investor-friendly realtor in your market that knows co-living, because I made the mistake like 2 or 3 properties at a time, right? Like my first couple where I was like, there's no one here to give me advice. Now, almost probably in most markets, there is someone probably that does investor friendly stuff that can give you good advice into what houses work the best what neighborhoods work the best, things to look out for, like parking or whatever it is. So that would be number one. On the operational side, it's like the urgency to like get those rooms filled as soon as you possibly can, especially when you have 100% vacancy, like when you're first filling them up.
I want to touch on two things here. The first one is, what type of houses make sense to be considered as co-living properties when you're looking for one that you want to buy? And then the other one is the neighborhood itself. What kind of candidate is the best fit for that? So let's start with, what types of house do you think will work well for co-living properties?
It all depends on where you are and like what's available. I would say that. Like, so for in Denver, we have a lot of single family homes that are pretty large, like 2,500, 3,000 plus square feet with basements. Those are fantastic. Those are what we do, bread and butter. We make them into 8 to 10 bedrooms, and they cash flow like crazy these days. So that's kind of the Denver method. I know that in Boston, another great place for co-living, there's a lot of triple deckers, like 3 triplexes. They're all 4-bed, 2-bath, like each unit is 4-bed, 2-baths. You're talking 12-bed, 6-bath triplex, like those print, but they don't have those in Denver. And so I'm not sure whatever's in your market, but you want to figure out like what works in your market. And also regulations play a big role in this too. Like Colorado doesn't have any regulations on unrelated people living in a home. Boston, it's 4. So you can have a triplex with 4 bedrooms per unit, and it still is it's kosher. It's above the law. It's above board. But if you get one with 5, it no longer is. You can't rent that 5th bedroom out technically. And so you got to know your regulations. You got to know what asset types are actually available in your market, and then you go after those 2 things.
And so as far as the neighborhood and the regulatory risk, it's really going to vary based on the city that you're in, the local laws that are there. But it's important to do research ahead of time so that you're not buying the property and then finding out that there's restrictions, but then you're stuck with the property and now it's not going to cash flow and you're forced to sell it within a year of buying it. That's a disastrous situation that people would never want to find themselves in.
The first thing you want to do is the regulations. If you're moving into a new market, the first thing you want to do is figure out the regulations around co-living. And usually that's just how many unrelated people can live in a house at the same time. ChatGPT it. Chat will get you that answer pretty quick. In terms of like locations, if you've got a market that does work, I stay away from A-class neighborhoods because we are going to have cars parked on the street. Like we're going to have, like it's in A-class neighborhoods don't like that. So we like B, C class neighborhoods. Where there's, big houses, decent sized lots, corner lots are great, that kind of thing.
Let's start to shift towards where you see things going for the future, because you're always thinking a few steps ahead. You're seeing trends in real time from the deals that you're doing and what the clients of your real estate team are seeing. What's your vision for where you want to take things with your co-living portfolio? I know that you talked about maybe you want to create a fund so that you can scale bigger. Do you see yourself doing as many of these in Denver as you can? Do you see yourself going to other cities? How big do you want this to go? And do you think that this co-living strategy is your end game? Or do you see it getting to a certain size and then you see it changing to something else, like multifamily, where you've got 30, 40, 50, 100 units, or some other strategy? What are your thoughts on your vision for the future for this?
Yeah, we're already looking bigger. So we're not really looking at single deals anymore. If they fall in our lap, we might take them on, but we're not looking at like these onesie, twosie single family houses. We're looking now to acquire portfolios of co-living, portfolios of student rentals, or multifamily buildings if they make sense, right? Like a lot of multifamily buildings, they're like 2-bed apartments, 1-bed apartments and studios. Like those won't work for us. But if we can find a multifamily building that's, got 3-2, 4-2, 5-2 type stuff, that's something that we would consider a little bit more. And so, yeah, we're absolutely scaling. We're looking to grow much faster, and just kind of bite off bigger chunks for each deal. And we are looking to go into different markets. The markets, we're not really like market specific. We're more like deal specific. So if we can find a portfolio in a different market, we'll go to that market. But to me, the markets don't, I think people spend a lot of time like spinning their wheels on what market to invest in. And they like the market to me, like people in every single market every single day are buying deals. So you can't tell me one market is like better than the other. It's just a pure speculation game at that point. So we're really chasing the deals more than we are the market.
I agree. I think it's a huge mistake that I've seen a lot of people make where they go, what city has the highest cash flow? And it's like, you can always find cash flow in the city that you're in. I mean, there may be exceptions like New York City, for example, but other than that, I mean, there's real estate investors in every market. There's ways to make deals work. Different types of deals and different playbooks and different strategies might work better in some cities compared to others. But that's also where you need a network. You need a community of other peers at a high level who are actively doing deals, who have playbooks and strategies that work, so that you can recognize those patterns and then you can implement those strategies yourself, or partner with other people that are already succeeding at it, or invest with other people that are already succeeding at it. So there's multiple paths to make it work, whatever city that you're located in.
Yep, 100%. Just, yeah, I always say to start in your backyard. Start with a house hack in your backyard if you're in the beginning phases. If you're looking to grow and scale and you want to make co-living your thing, I mean, there's a lot of co-living like communities out there. Sam Wiegert's got a group, Scale Your Real Estate. Miller's got a group, the co-living cash flow community. Like, join these starts of things and get around these operators that are really doing this at scale if you want to scale. Or if you just want, some of the return, then there's always the passive route as well.
Is there anything else that you think is an important factor to talk about if people are considering investing in co-living properties that we haven't touched on yet? I know that we've covered a lot of ground from, how tenants are found, how they're screened, operations, how you're finding and funding these deals, and what types of neighborhoods and properties make sense to consider it. Is there anything else that you feel is an important part of this process that we haven't touched on yet?
I would say the only other thing maybe is like, if you're planning on not house hacking and buying a co-living home, you're going to have to do the 20% down. Sometimes you can do 20% down and not live there, but oftentimes that would be a DSCR loan. And so in the DSCR, people were not there yet with like trying to like say, oh, the renters are going to rent out for $800 a pop. So like, it's going to obviously cash flow. So the way that a lot of DSCR people are doing it are like, you got to underwrite it as an Airbnb, or it's got to be underwritten as a long-term rental. And so they got to kind of figure out how that, so you want to talk to some lenders if you're not going to house hack and figure out like what they can do.
What is it a DSCR loan for people that are not familiar with that term?
It stands for debt service coverage ratio. So what that basically, and that probably didn't, if you don't know what that means, then that probably means nothing to you. Basically what it does is like, they don't evaluate you as like the borrower, they just evaluate the deal. So it's like, okay, let's say your mortgage payment is $2,000, or let's just say $1,000 a month for easy math. You basically need to your rents need to be 125% of that, for example. So it might say your rents have to be at least $1,250 in order for us to do this loan. And that's basically what they go off of. And so oftentimes, especially in this market with like, rates being where they're at and prices being where they're at, it's hard to make that jive with a long-term rental. So we do the short-term rental, assessment, and hopefully someday they figure out the co-living side of it.
Got it. Okay. And as we kind of look forward into moving into 2026 here, I think there's still a lot of people that are on the sidelines that are maybe waiting for prices to fall. Rates have fallen a bit. They're probably waiting for them to fall further. How would you tell people that, there's always going to be reasons not to buy. There's always going to be fear out there, but you can make a deal in any market. What kind of advice would you give to people who are trying to think about where they want to deploy capital this year, even with the higher prices and higher rates than what we've seen in years prior?
The money is made, and when real estate's not sexy, right? Like, you're going to get the best deals right now. Like, the only thing that you're not going to get is the best financing that you've ever seen, but like, you're going to get the best deals. And so right now, we're getting stuff under asking, we're getting whatever we want on inspection. We're able to we've got some power as buyers for once. And that feels pretty good for me, especially as like primarily a buyer's agent. And primarily a buyer. As I said, I don't sell that much. So yeah, I mean, now's the time to buy. Like, could prices totally fall out from underneath them? Sure. But my property's cash flow, so it's okay. And if property values are decreasing, that means likely the economy is bad and likely people aren't able to afford a typical place to rent. And so our strategy is pretty like recession proof, because that's what people would go to, is rooms for rent. It's the cheapest thing that's not a trailer. And so that's kind of like, that's our hedge on like market condition, right? And then of course, if it goes up, well then great, it goes up, right? So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Craig, where can people find out more about you if they want to get in touch with you to talk about any of the things that we've discussed today with your strategies around house hacking, co-living? We covered so many topics around the work that you've done so far. What kind of people do you think should reach out to you, and where would they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm the Fi Guy on Instagram. And yeah, and also just like Craig Curelop, Curelop. If you just Google that, you can probably find my Facebook. And then I actually might be changing my Instagram. Yeah, Craig Curelop. If you just type that in anywhere, you'll find it. You'll find me.
Craig, you have so much incredible knowledge on house hacking and co-living and all the experience from the deals that you've done, the team that you have. So we really appreciate you sharing all of your experience, a deep dive into everything. And one parting question before you go is, we talked about a lot of the incredible parts of what you've done and what you've built. There is one story that is pretty wild where one deal did not go according to plan. And I want to make sure that we squeeze that in before we leave today. If I'm not wrong, wasn't there a deal where you had an $80,000 mistake that was very costly?
There were two deals that I've sold. Well, actually 3 deals that I've ever sold. One of them I got an offer I couldn't refuse, so that was a good thing. The other 2 were bad ones. The first one was a flip gone bad in Jacksonville, and contractor ran away with a bunch of money. Everything you could possibly think of gone wrong on that property could have. And I did sell that one, and I think I lost like $50,000 of my investors' money, and then I probably lost like $20,000 or $30,000 of my own. So that one hurt. I don't think that's the one you're thinking of, though.
No, it's not. I have a different one.
Yeah, the other one is it was actually my 4th house hack. So it was actually the one after we just missed it, because it was the one after my wife's first one. We moved into this house. It was awesome. Like it already had this separate downstairs kitchen that we were mentioning before. It had a nice upstairs, 2 kitchens, corner lot right across the street from a train that goes right into the city. And it had this like big kind of converted garage that was kind of turned into a master bedroom. And so I turned that big master bedroom into a studio. So I basically made a triplex out of it. And it got like flagged by, I didn't pull permits or anything like that. So I got caught not pulling permits, had to go through that whole process. And then finally, when it was all done, and it was a cash flowing like a monster. I mean, I bought it for like $420. My monthly payment, this was like the low of the low of interest rates. It was like a 2.5% interest rate. I think my monthly payment was like $1,900, and I was making probably like $4,000 or $5,000 on the house. It was nuts. And then I started seeing like cracks in the drywall, cracks like coming from the windows and the door frames and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of like shrugged it off at first. I was like, whatever, it's just like settling, whatever. New drywall, it kind of happens. And then it got worse and worse and worse. And so then I was like, all right, like we got to like take down this drywall. So we took down this drywall, and there were cracks. Literally, I could fit my forearm into the cracks of this house, diagonal cracks, like going through the whole foundation. Like there was massive foundational issues, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of foundational issues. And so what I did was I called the previous seller, and I was like, yo, like you did not tell me about this. And he's like, well, I didn't like know about it. I never lived there. And I was like, bro, this drywall is like I bought the house in 2020, like early, or it would have been like mid 2020. I was like, bro, this drywall was stamped like late 2019. Like you did this. Like I know you did that. Like I don't know if it was you, but you knew to cover it up. And so fun fact is that on the back of most drywall, is a date of the manufacturing date. And so if it was a manufacturing date of 2019, I surely know they installed it probably in early 2020. And so I was like, look, like we can do this, or I'm gonna have to take you to court. Like, this is a big thing. And he was like, okay, whatever. I think he just didn't want to deal with it. And he actually did. Luckily, he did have a lot of money. So he basically wrote me a check off the cuff to release him from everything for like 80 grand. And so he wrote me a check for 80 grand. And I ended up selling the property. I did a little bit of work. That basically made me break even. So like I broke even and I sold the property. And because of the market run up, I actually did sell it at like $120,000 more than I bought it for the year before, plus the 80 grand. I put about 200,000 into it. And so that was the deal that I had to sell. I'm glad I sold it. And, but like, and it was like, man, it would have been the home run of home runs of deals.
That is unbelievable. So everyone, make sure that you get your home inspection. Make sure that you get a structural inspection. If there's any signs of structural issues or cracks, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and definitely the case when it comes to inspections.
Yeah, amen. I'll say that I did get it inspected. My inspector did not catch any of the structural stuff. So because he didn't, I always say the general inspection is like your general practitioner doctor. Like, they know a little about everything, but a lot about nothing. And so like this guy didn't catch any of the, and honestly, there was no cracks at the time. There was no reason for him. I'm not really faulting him. They're not going to like go behind the drywall. But I didn't have a structural engineer go look at it because, again, there was no reason to. I'd recommend, honestly, any house that you buy, get a structural engineer out there to go take a look. It's usually like $300. I got a guy that does it for $300 to $400. And he just gives me a text response. Like I don't need an official report. A official report is going to cost you more, like $600 to $800.
Got it.
But if you need that official report, get it. Like, it's worth it, because it's worth knowing that your structure is sound and that there's nothing that needs to be done.
Absolutely. That is such good advice for people, because I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot. It's so easy to not do that. I would actually say that probably 95% of home buyers don't ever get a structural inspection at all when they're buying a property, unless it's something that gets flagged as a moderate or serious issue on that inspection report.
Yep, exactly right.
That is an unbelievable story. And thank you for showing us behind the scenes, the good, the bad, the ugly. But that's also why it's important to have several properties so that your risk is spread out, because you might have some home runs and then you might have some, hidden challenges and disasters here and there. But if you've got a large portfolio, if you've scaled, then it's diversified across other properties, and it can help offset any losses that you have on your way.
Yeah, you're gonna lose. I mean, it's hard to do a lot of deals and not ever lose money.
Yeah.
So you're gonna probably lose money. You're gonna have some strikeouts, and you're gonna have some home runs, and you'll probably have a lot more singles and doubles in between. But yeah.
Is there anything else that you want listeners to know before we part ways today?
I think that's it, man. I think you covered the gamut.
Craig Curelop, thank you so much.
You got it.
Oh, we got it. Last time is the charm. That's a wrap. That's the show. Thanks for watching today's episode. Make sure you check out the next one that YouTube's recommending. It's personally chosen for you based on YouTube's algorithm and AI, so hopefully it's a great fit.